There are cars that define an era. And then there are cars that defy it. The BMW M1 wasn't just a car. It was a rebellion on four wheels. Born from corporate chaos, Italian flair, and German precision, the M1 is one of the rarest and most misunderstood supercars in history. A machine that tried to bring BMW to the top of motorsport, and instead became the legend that almost never was. Today, let's dive deep into the story of the BMW M1, the car that made BMW motorsport, broke international rules, and still whispers its legacy through every M badge you see today. It's the mid-1970s. BMW is in its renaissance. The 3.0 CSL, the famous Batmobile, is dominating European touring car championships, winning titles, and turning BMW into a motorsport powerhouse. At the center of this rise is Jochen Neerpasch, the visionary former racing driver and manager who had built BMW Motorsport in 1972. Neerpasch had already hired young talents like Hans Joachim Stuck and an upcoming driver named Niki Lauda during his time with Ford. At BMW, he wanted to take the next step, to create a true racing car that can compete against the mid-engine titans of endurance racing, like the Porsche 935 and the Ferrari 512. But the rules were strict. Group 4 racing required manufacturers to homologate their race cars by building at least 400 street-legal versions. BMW had never done anything like this before. Their cars were fast, but they were only front-engine sedans. The next car would have to be a literal supercar. A German-engineered, mid-engine machine. A car that would change everything. That dream would become the BMW M1. BMW didn't have the facilities or the experience to build a mid-engine car. They needed a partner, and in the mid-1970s, there was only one name that made sense: Lamborghini. Lamborghini at the time was known for the Miura and the Countach, the poster cars of the decade. BMW's idea was simple. Lamborghini would handle the chassis and the assembly, while BMW focused on engineering, the powertrain, and final tuning. The two companies signed an agreement in 1976, beginning the project. The chassis was designed by Giampaolo Dallara, one of Lamborghini's brightest engineers and the man behind the Miura's chassis. The bodywork would be styled by Giorgetto Giugiaro of Italdesign, arguably the greatest car designer of the 20th century, who had also shaped icons like the DeLorean DMC-12 and the Maserati Bora. Giugiaro's design was timeless. A wedge-shaped body, razor-sharp lines, pop-up headlights, and a low white stance. It looked fast standing still, like a Countach's more disciplined German cousin. But the partnership began to crumble before the car could even roll out. By 1978, Lamborghini was drowning in debt due to the oil crisis, collapsing sales, and eternal strife. Workers went unpaid, suppliers stopped delivering, and the factories were essentially paralyzed. BMW engineers arrived in Sant'Agata to find a near-abandoned workshop, and only 7 partially built prototypes. Furious, BMW terminated the contract and took back control. They moved production to several smaller facilities across Europe. The chassis was built by Marchesi Moderna, the fiberglass body panels by TIR, final assembly by Bauer in Stuttgart, and the engines by BMW in Munich. The M1 was finally on track, but the damage had already been done. It was 1978, 2 years late, millions over budget, and the racing world had already moved on. Under the rear deck sat the soul of the M1, the M88 engine. This wasn't just any BMW inline 6. It was a hand-built, motorsport-grade masterpiece. 3.5 liters, twin cam, 24 valves, and a mechanical Kugelfischl fuel injection. In its road-going form, it made 273 horsepower and 243 pound-foot of torque. It was respectable, but what mattered was how it felt. The power delivery was linear, the throttle was crisp, and the sound was a raw metallic howl that screamed to 6,500 RPM. The M88 engine was so over-engineered that BMW later reused it in the E24 M635 CSI and the first M5, proving its racing DNA lived on. For the racetrack, BMW developed the M88 variant, which produced upwards of 470 horsepower in the Pro Car spec, and over 850 horsepower in later turbocharged Group 5 versions. It was a monster, but the timing of its birth would soon become its biggest curse. By the time BMW finished producing 400 required road cars, Group 4 regulations had changed. Porsche had moved on to the new 935 platform, and BMW's original target had vanished. But Jochen Neerpasch wasn't ready to let his dream die. He pitched a radical idea to Bernie Ecclestone, the head of Formula One Constructors Association, along with Max Mosley. The idea? It would be a support series that would feature the world's best drivers racing identical BMW M1s right before the F1 Grand Prix. The BMW M1 Pro Car Championship was born. From 1979 to 1980, fans witnessed something special. Formula One legends like Niki Lauda, Nelson Piquet, Alan Jones, Mario Andretti, and Clay Regazzoni going head-to-head in identical cars. Each race featured the top 5 F1 drivers from qualifying, joined by privateers and BMW works drivers. The cars were prepared by Project 4 Racing, a team led by a young Ron Dennis, who would later merge his outfit with McLaren. The Pro Car series was pure, unfiltered competition. The cars were brutally loud, twitchy, and thrilling. Niki Lauda won the inaugural 1975 championship, with Nelson Piquet dominating in 1980. But despite its success with the fans, the Pro Car series was expensive, and the BMW's attention was shifting towards Formula One engine development with Brabham. The M1's racing life came to an end, but its legend had only just begun. The BMW M1 wasn't just a race car homologation special. It was also a street machine that offered something completely unique. It had a top speed of 162 miles per hour, faster than most Ferraris of the time, and it could sprint from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 5.4 seconds. The car featured a 5-speed ZF gearbox, double wishbone suspension on all 4 corners, and a perfect mid-engine balance. Inside, it was surprisingly refined. Leather seats, air conditioning, and even electric windows. BMW built it to be usable, not just beautiful. Yet, for all its brilliance, it was too expensive, too complicated, and arrived too late. By 1981, only 453 units were ever produced, including 20 Pro Car racers. Each one hand-assembled, each one a piece of history. When production stopped, many called the M1 a failure, but time has rewritten that story. The M88 engine became the beating heart of the 1984 BMW M5, the world's first super sedan, and the E24 M635 CSI, giving them the same DNA as the M1. The M division had learned how to build performance cars for the road, blending racing technology with everyday usability. In essence, the M1 paved the way for every M car that followed. Even decades later, BMW paid tribute to it with a 2008 M1 homage concept, a futuristic reimagining that reignited interest in the original. And when BMW launched the i8 in 2014, a mid-engined hybrid sports car, many saw it as a spiritual successor to the M1. Collectors now view the M1 as the purest expression of BMW's motorsport ambitions. The car that was never about market trends, but about engineering dreams. The M1 story isn't just about success, it's about persistence, about fighting for your vision when everything falls apart, when your partners bail, when your dream no longer makes sense on paper. Jochen Neerpasch left BMW shortly after the Pro Car series ended, but his legacy lived on. Not only through the M1, but through every M car that came after. The M1 failed as a racing car, but it succeeded as a symbol of what happens when passion and engineering collide without compromise. It stands as a reminder. Greatness isn't always about winning trophies. Sometimes it's about daring to build something the world has never seen. So the next time you see an M badge, on a sedan, on a coupe, or even an SUV, remember where it came from. Remember the M1, the car born from chaos, built by passion, and remembered as the heart that started it all. Because in the story of BMW, the M1 wasn't just the first M car. It was the soul of motorsport. This was the story of the BMW M1, the legend that refused to die. Thank you.